I have a bit of a confession. I am deeply prejudiced against season twos. A dozen years back, when I was an escapee from Western media and I just landed on the shores of East Asian media, I was delighted by the idea that a story could be fully told in 16 to 20, maybe sometimes 24 episodes. What? I was used to like 80 to 100 episodes spanning 5 to 6 seasons over 3 to 4 years and still not getting closure because some CBS executive somewhere decided that this is the time to cancel the show. I'm still traumatized by how some of my favorite shows got axed in their 8th to 9th season just when the couple I was rooting for was about to get together. That is not a world I want to go back to. So yeah, I'm not a fan of season 2s. However, there are certain shows that I am willing to wait for a second season for because the way the story is told both gives me a somewhat completed arc and leaves room for more story to be told. For instance, Yumi Cells, which has now announced an upcoming third season. When it aired its first season, it was a complete story. It was a story about, well, Yumi's cells more than anything else, and her romance was honestly secondary. It was everything Yumi was feeling that was the primary focus of the story. So the fact that the drama ended on a breakup didn't necessarily mean it was an open ending. It just meant that this was a glimpse into Yumi's life. We got to walk with her for a little while, and now we are parting ways. It was fine. It was honestly complete as it was. However, they came back with the second season because it was a mega hit. Fandom was insanely hooked. And it didn't do as well as the first season, which honestly any experienced fan could have told you it wouldn't. I enjoyed it, but I would have been fine without it. However, once the second season came out, now I started feeling like I needed closure. You've given me 2 failed relationships in Yumi's life. Now the focus has shifted from Yumi's cells to Yumi's failed romances. If you don't give me a third season and a romance with a happy ending, then it kind of feels like you are telling an incomplete story. And also, Yumi Cell is adapted from a web novel or a webtoon. There is original material where she has some 7-8 relationships over a period of time, and she grows as a person. So the fandom already knows that there is a final relationship to look forward to in the original material. So once you've given me 2 of her relationships, I kind of expect to see the third and final one. I don't want 7 seasons. I just want a third and final one that kind of wraps up her story so that now that you've made her entire arc about, having relationships, being really earnestly in them, being with really lovely men, but it not working out long term, you need to also give me closure and give me a relationship where it does work out long term. So you kind of see the pattern. You have set an expectation by releasing a season 2, so now I must have a season 3. However, I promise you, most people are not even thinking about Yumi Cells season 3. There is hardly any interest. I have tried drumming up some interest amongst my friends. They don't even remember what happened in the first season. Most of them haven't watched season 2. They just remember Womb, because of course they do. Anboyang. So who is the network making Yumi's Cells 3 for? Well, they have the IP lying there. They know that there is at least some interest. Chances are that it's going to have a lower budget than the first 2 seasons. Second season, by the way, already visibly had a lower budget than the first one. Or if it didn't have a lower budget, less of the budget was allocated to CGI and possibly more was allocated to talent. That's a hypothesis. But watch the second season, compare it with the first one, and tell me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure season 3 is going to have a lower budget still. And of course, they have Kim Go-eun. Kim Go-eun is something of a hit maker herself. Like, she has excellent eye for projects, and the ones she takes on tend to attract large audiences. I think it's because she has really good taste in scripts and not necessarily because her star power is so much that she pulls audiences, but likely it's a combination of the two. But if you ask me, I can't think of any other show where a season 2 was needed or had any kind of appreciable audience. Wait, maybe that is not completely true. There is one other exception that I can immediately think of that actually did materially better than season 1, and that was season 2 of Dr. Romantic, or Romantic Doctor Teacher Kim. And this second season had a brand new main couple whose romance was what propelled this drama from just another medical drama to a romance medical drama that was like quite buzzing for a while. And it did substantially better than season 1. Of course, because it did substantially better than season 1, they immediately greenlit a season 3, which came and went, and I don't know anybody who has actually finished it. I couldn't, but then my reasons were not entirely connected to boredom. It was because the drama brought this guy in as the female lead's father. I'm just not a fan for reasons that have nothing to do with his acting. But the couple of episodes that I did watch immediately showed me how laid back the writing was. They were not really working hard to hook the audience to a new concept or a new idea. They were very clearly talking to an audience that already existed. And like I said, it came, it went, it barely created a ripple. Another example of, I don't know if it was successful, but it was something that people quite liked, was the Voice franchise. Voice had several seasons, and I know at least 2 people who have watched all of them. And they preferred the first couple of seasons, but they continued to watch the later seasons as well. So it's not like seasons never work. It's just that multiple seasons being popular is a rare thing. Now, what brought on all of this? I don't think I told you guys. So I went on Threads recently and I saw a repost of this article. And hey, as an aside, have you guys noticed how Indian entertainment websites did a 180 during the pandemic era, and they started writing about Asian dramas, primarily K-dramas? And I can tell you why. You interested in why? It's because of advertising money. Our industry, like Indian industry, had completely shut down. Sports Kira, which was supposed to be on sports, was suddenly writing about K-dramas. Why? Because, well, nobody was playing cricket or any other sport in this country at that point. Everything was shut down. The websites needed to survive. And so what I am assuming happened, this is a hypothesis, is that young journalists who were K-drama fans started writing articles because they still had article quotas to meet if they were going to get paid, started pitching articles about entertainment in the only place that was actually still giving us entertainment, which is K-dramas and K-pop. And those articles were getting international clicks. And that matters if you're a blogger, you know why? Because clicks from certain countries like the USA or the UK just gets you higher revenue than if you were getting clicks locally. And that habit stuck. So even now, I sometimes get articles sent to me by friends who are living in like Australia or South Africa, and they are sending me articles from like Hindustan Times or Indian Express. Why are these newspapers still writing about Asian dramas? It's because journalism here sucks. Nobody gets paid. There is no advertising money. Subscriptions are not working out for people. And anyway, I don't hold that against them. What bothers me is how little effort they put into actually writing these articles. Most of them are just sourced from Sumpi. This is not even original journalism that's being done. And sometimes when you do find links to a Korean website, those links were also from Sumpi. They did literally no original research. And hey, if you're a journalist out there who's doing your original research, please send me your articles. I would love to read them. I just don't see it being done here. And then they come up with interesting headlines like these. 5 K-dramas Netflix cancelled. And what are the examples? Life Gives You Tangerine and When the Phone Rings. Who was expecting season 2 for either of these dramas? Who? And then I found this headline that said, Netflix cancels Resident Playbook after 4 episodes aired. There is clickbait, and then there is this. The body of it goes into slightly more detail and says that Netflix is not going ahead with a season 3 for Hospital Playlist, but this is like very old news. They had already said they were not going to do a third season. There was no reason to do a third season. When they had announced the first season of Hospital Playlist, they had left a little room for a season 2 to play out. We had at least two couples whose romantic future was left kind of out there. So we kind of had that to look forward to. And friends, I am rewatching Hospital Playlist right now. I finished Resident Playbook, which I enjoyed a lot. And now I am rewatching Hospital Playlist. I am halfway through and I know for sure all of my favorite scenes from Hospital Playlist are in this season. I technically know what plot lines are probably in the second season, but I don't actually remember any of it. Like, none of them really stuck to my brain the way the scenes from season 1 did. I know I enjoyed season 2, but not as much as I enjoyed season 1, and I am enjoying season 1 again now. In the interest of being completely honest with you guys, this is my personal opinion. Season 2 of Hospital Playlist did really well, both domestically and internationally. And on the same vein, another drama that comes to mind that did really well in season 2, but in my opinion had a bloated storyline, was Alchemy of Souls, which was originally supposed to be one season of 20 episodes. But once the creators realized how much interest the audience had in watching the romance takeoff, especially with Go Eun-jung, they did that 10-episode extension. And from a business perspective, really great decision. They caught the right audience mood and they delivered what was wanted. The fact that for purists like me, the storytelling in the second season feels very disconnected from the first season doesn't ultimately matter because they got to make a lot of money and audiences were genuinely very happy with season 2. If you look at the data, the domestic ratings for the 10 episodes is comparable to how high the ratings were for the very end of season 1. And I guess this ties back to what I had talked about earlier. If you have incomplete storylines that audiences are really invested in, of course they would want a continuation, more episodes, tell us the full story, especially if it's romance. But often these seasons aren't pre-planned, which is why they kind of get bloated and don't have the same tightness of scripting as the original season. There are other examples that I can give you of very popular shows which ended up having a season 2, which were received in a very lukewarm way. Stranger comes to mind. Forest of Secrets did not need a second season. It was a complete arc. It was a beautiful series, but they gave us a second season. It's not like it was a bad season. It was just the tightness of storytelling, the thematic connectivity, the juiciness of the first season simply did not translate to the second one. Maybe because, as the creator of Squid Game said in this very interesting interview, that sometimes a creator just has to do a second season for money.
You were so stressed that you didn't want to do a second series.
Yes.
You were adamant. So why did you change your mind?
money. 지금 시스템에서 시즌 1만 해서는 사실은 이렇게 빅 석세스를 거두었음에도 불구하고 경제적으로 이제 가져갈 수 있는 것이 사실은 없기 때문에 시즌 2를 해야 그 시즌 1의 성공에 대한 어떤 정도의 보상이 있기 때문에 그것도 사실은 큰 이유 중에 하나였어요.
And I respect that. That's cool. Get that back from the corporates. I am on your side. But that is not going to end up changing our experience as an audience. From our perspective, we see work done that is good, but not as good as the first season. Another interesting example is Pachinko. You can argue that Pachinko doesn't exactly count as a K-drama, but it did tap into the same audience as your regular K-drama watchers, as well as like a larger audience. I remember the kind of hype Pachinko got when the first season released, and everybody who was starting to watch Pachinko knew that a second season would be coming because the novel it's based on has more story to tell. Despite that, when season 2 came out, and season 2 was done really well, no effort was spared, it again kind of aired to crickets. Like it did well, but there was barely any hype before its release, and I still haven't met a single person who's finished watching the second season. Let's talk about Squid Game. We have no way of knowing the kind of numbers Squid Game 2 would have done. And now you have a third part coming out. I think that was already when the contract for season 2 was being set. The creator kind of rolled a season 3 into it. And again, applause for the bag he's getting. But the promotional hype that we saw before the release of season 2 completely died out after it aired. I was really watching out for people talking about it because I am not a fan of Squid Game. As in, I'm not an anti-fan. I just feel meh about it. I couldn't finish the first season. I have tried multiple times. However, I thought, hey, maybe if the second season has something interesting going on, that'll like prime me to go back and finish the first season. But no, it had some fun moments and it had some really great actors. But overall, the impression I got was that everybody was underused and the story became stupider as it progressed. And I don't know who's looking forward to season 3. If you need yet another example of a season 2 airing and not many people actually watching the drama, Uncanny Counter comes to mind. I love the first season, even though towards the end of it, they were kind of struggling. There were like creative fights happening behind the scene. It was messy. Season 2, though, was just stupid. I don't know how else to talk about it. Like, they had clearly had an upgrade in the budget because the special effects were expensive, very clearly expensive. They had action shots that were completely unnecessary in a story about homegrown superheroes. It was absurdly flashy, but the story didn't back it up. I was so done by the end of the season, I didn't even care how they ended it. And that's not the mental state you want your viewers to be in. I just realized I got distracted and I still didn't tell you guys what prompted me to make this video. They announced a season 2 for Judge from Hell. Listen, you can argue that the ending of season 1 was a happily for now, and I would agree with you. But you know, happily ever afters are also not necessarily happily ever, like unless you follow them to their last dying breath, like Queen of Tears, you are not gonna know what their life pans out like after you have left them at the end of episode 16 or 12. They could die in a car accident next year. Nobody's going to tell you the drama's already ended. They've already walked off into the sunset. My point is that happily for now works fine. They did something that made me so happy, which is they allowed Bitna to stay herself at the very end. Do you know how rare that is, my friends? I was really happy by how they closed everything off at the end of season 1. I don't want to call it season 1. At the end of the drama. But now they're reopening the chapter and they are like, hey, let's do, 12 more episodes. How are they going to do 12 more episodes without undoing some of the threads that they had already tied off before? Which means that moral conundrums and character growth that we had already seen in the first season is now going to get undone halfway and then sort of like stretched over another season worth of episodes, and it's going to be bad. I'm sorry, there is no way you can convince me to be optimistic about this. It's going to be bad. And I don't understand why they want to ruin our memory of a perfectly good drama. There are all of these upcoming projects which majority of them are streaming projects like Trauma Code or Study Group or Moving. And some of these shows like Study Group or Moving have left enough of the story open-ended that you can argue that a second season is necessary for the audience to get closure. There are other stories like Trauma Code, for instance, which didn't really have much of an arc. It was very episodal, it was very quick, and it was fun to watch. And a second season of that same experience would not be a bad idea. I wouldn't mind. The only thing is the original season had a distinct goal where this crazy genius surgeon comes in and basically decides a trauma center will be built. So he just motivates a lot of people and like manipulates the politics of the hospital, and he gets the job done. So his trauma center is now created. Yay! So in season 2, just like with Dr. Romantic, which had a similar we need a trauma center arc, they're probably going to go for a bigger trauma center. You can only do this for so long before the house of cards kind of starts falling apart, because you don't have any more larger story to tell. If this had a sitcom format, you could extend it to, I don't know, 6 seasons, 10, 12 seasons. As long as the episodal arcs were fun to watch, people would keep watching. But as soon as you use a storytelling format that requires a seasonal arc, you can only stretch it for so long before your audience abandons you, or it gets cancelled because the audience abandoned you. So that's more of an and than an or. I am kind of looking forward to Attorney Woo Young Woo coming back on my screen, which it probably will do next year or the year after that. Simply because Woo Young Woo at the end of season 1 had just stepped out into the larger world, and now she is working for a smaller firm. You've put her at the start of the board again. Her and her, coterie of other lawyers, like how will they build up their little firm? That in itself is a story arc that can span a season. So there is potential there. Most of the time, the dramas that get a season 2 start at the end of a story, which is why there is no more story to be told, and you're just pulling teeth at this point. Okay, does it ever work out? Like, I've given you a few success stories where it does, or where I am kind of looking forward to a story because it has some story left to be told, like Yumi Cell or Attorney Woo. There is also this other format that has traditionally worked, and I don't know why they don't just do that. We just saw it work out with Hospital Playlist. Resident Playbook did really well, like really well. And the reason was you had a fresh cast, you had a fresh setting, but the format was the same. The really sincere writing, the clear-eyed view of how people deal with pain and trauma, as well as just the interpersonal stories, they were done the same loving way that the first season of Hospital Playlist was done. This thing where a spin-off is sometimes as successful or close to as successful as the original has happened several times. The Reply series, for instance, we call it a series, like a series of dramas, but it's kind of not. They are all individual stories. The only thing similar about them is the kids growing up surrounded by friends format, and the parents having their own mature stories running parallelly with the children. And the children grow up, and who do they end up with? That format was similar, but each of the stories, 1997, 1988, and 1994, I think, were separate stories. But that worked. There are a lot of people who prefer like 1988 over the other two. I personally love 1997 like it's my firstborn child. My firstborn child is like sleeping right there. He's a dog. But the secondborn child then, I still really enjoyed the other two dramas. And every time one of these came out, a lot of fandom conversation happened around them. People were genuinely looking forward to the next iteration. Do it like this. Don't just reuse an IP and be like, I don't want to pay the creators more money. We already own the rights to everything here. Just get a screenwriter, write a new thing. Let's slap some more money and just get all of the revenue. Just don't do that. It's so lazy, and the audiences can tell. The problem is, even though we can tell, they do make some amount of money from this, and it's too easy a way of making money for them to stop. The only thing we can do is what we have been doing all along, which is vote with our eyeballs and wallets. If you don't want to watch the season 2 of something, don't force yourself to watch it. It's most likely going to ruin your experience of the first season. I still regret watching Stranger 2. They made certain choices which ruined some moments of the first season for me, and I found that unforgivable. Anyway, so I don't want Judge from Hell to get a season 2, but I am still excited for a Yumi Cell season 3. I want Park Shin-hye to go and do more amazing roles, new ones, just like she did with Pitna. Nobody was expecting her to take a story like this. She was so good. And she like really validated my trust in her ability. She's always been trying for a character like this, and she finally got one. So proud of her. But go do something new.